Hello, folks. Welcome to today's Concealed Carry podcast. We'll get it kicked off here officially momentarily. We'll give you a moment for you all to pop in here and join the feed. But as you can see here, I have somebody with me, and it's a special guest, Rich Brown from the American Warrior Society. What's up?
What's going on, brother? Good to see you, Riley.
You too, man. You too. Really glad and appreciative to you for doing this with us today. So it'll be a good show.
Yeah, I've been fans of what you guys are doing for quite some time now, man.
Well, I appreciate that, and the same, likewise. American Warrior Society is a really, Mike and you guys got a good thing going. It's a really
Thanks up
solid
for that.
program. In fact, out of all of the different membership kind of like programs, societies, groups, whatever, I think American Warrior Society is probably one of the most well-rounded. From like the health and fitness side of things to hand to hand, defensive, BJJ, the gun, right? Obviously, knife, edged weapons. So, really, really solid, well rounded stuff you guys got.
Well,
So,
I'm really appreciate that, Riley.
yeah. So we got a few more popping in here. Who do we all have? We have Larry and Minuteman for Jesus on YouTube. Cool. Thanks for popping in here, guys. I don't know if the Facebook notification has gone out yet. That's one thing I have noticed, Rich, with this StreamYard program, is sometimes a Facebook notification is a bit delayed,
Hmm.
but sometimes it works, immediately, and other times it's a minute or two before that. Ah, there it goes. I just got the notification just now.
All right,
So
cool.
So we should have a few more popping in here now that the notification's gone out, and that's why we always give it a moment before we get into the actual recorded audio portion of the show.
And do you leave these videos up, Riley?
hmm Yeah, you'll find it on Facebook and YouTube.
Awesome.
Yep, yep. Yeah. So, in fact, I will try to go in. I can't tag people when I create the live feed, but after the fact, I'll try to go back and like tag you and stuff if you care to. Uh,
Yeah, cool,
make it
man.
make it easier to find and share and stuff. Anyway, cool. Now we got a few more coming in here too. We got Tony and Ken and Everest. Thanks for joining, guys. Ralph. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and begin the recorded portion of today's show. And so let's do it. In 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 394. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host, Riley Bowman. And today I have a special guest with me on the program, and that is Rich Brown from American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show. What's up, Rich?
What's going on, Concealed Carry Nation? How you guys doing?
I think everybody's excited to see that you're here. So, in fact, we got more people checking in here on the live feed. We got HR Production 210. He says his first live show, and he's going to catch a good one for his first live show. We got Law of Self Defense also checking in. Hey, Andrew. So, good crowd here today. I'm sure there'll be a few more that join us. Today's episode, we want to give an honorary mention as an honorary sponsor, because that's what we do here, to AmericanWarriorSociety.com. It's where you can find really awesome content, training, and info from Mike Seeklander, Rich Brown, and others. Also, you guys host the American Warrior Show, a podcast I've been listening to for years, and I'm a big fan of.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah, we got this month, February of 2015 is when we started. So we got 5 years of podcast material out there, man.
That is awesome. And I think we are about a year behind you. So, yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't much in the space when we started, but thankfully, there's some really good stuff coming out. You guys are, among the top of the heap. So thanks for what you guys are doing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Keep plugging away at it. So
Yeah.
now we passed you up an episode number because we decided for whatever reason to do two a week a long time ago now. But it's not about quantity; it's about quality, and you guys put out some serious quality. Hey, also, today's episode is brought to you by, made possible by GuardianNation.com. Folks, longtime listeners, definitely familiar with Guardian Nation. And also, fairly new endeavor of ours, MountainManMedical.com. And so, guys, if you don't have your kit, go pick up your kit, MountainManMedical.com. So let's jump into it, Rich. Today's episode, we're gonna focus on an article that you wrote last year called "10 Tips on Carrying Concealed to Win a Gunfight." And this is a fantastic article, Rich. I mean, it is there's a number of points, especially as I'm going through, and I'm like, oh man, I'm glad he said that, or some other things that I might just have to steal from you, bro.
Yeah, wear it out.
So, what was your inspiration for writing this article?
YouTube was my inspiration, Riley. You get what you pay for with YouTube, and American Warrior Society is a paid membership site. Let's get that out of the way. If you want to become a member, it's going to cost you less than $1 a day. But on YouTube, man, it seems like anybody that got a concealed carry permit and has a camera and a microphone has put together a concealed carry tips. And I got to thinking, man, after watching a few of these, I'm like, man, they're missing some really good stuff. And I guess we can go into my background of what makes me qualified to give a set of 10 tips before anybody decides they want to listen to me or not, if you want to do
that. That's awesome. There's a lot of, it's true, there's a lot of tips out there. And I've seen some other articles, I've seen some YouTube videos as well where people provide some tips. And there's definitely those you come across, you're like, yeah, I don't know that I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I will say I agree with 99.9% of what you wrote in this article. So
thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. You're going to leave something out, or you're going to publish it and go, man, I should have included that. Or if I was doing a top 12 tips, that would have been number 12, whatever. But you got to stop at something, right?
Yep. Now, so in the very beginning of the article here, you actually talk about your background, and I don't know if I knew the extent of your experience myself, but you mentioned how you've been carrying a firearm concealed since 1992.
Mm-hmm.
That's dang near 3 decades. That's a while.
Yeah. And that's what cracked me up. Some of the soft community that have been engaged in the global war on terror, and then they come out and put together their concealed carry tips. Well, I don't know how much exposure they had to carrying concealed on foreign soil or even here, other than just being a civilian. So I'm like, although there's some amazing folks out there putting these tips together, I mean, like, I started carrying concealed as a Marine overseas in 1992. I'm not saying carrying openly, but carrying concealed overseas, going back, gosh, like you said, almost 3 decades, all the way up to the present. So I've thought about it quite a bit. I've learned a few things along the way. I've certainly screwed up a few times, but yeah, that's what led me to this.
So back in the 90s, particularly the early and mid 90s, concealed carry wasn't what it is today. There, as far as the equipment, holsters, I mean, even the guns were not as ideal, as far as design for concealed carry, the way a lot of things are today. What was it like for you? I mean, you mentioned 1992. You were a Marine at the time, is that right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So, and you also mentioned that you carried concealed in the military. So,
Yes.
what did that look like? What kind of gear were you using to make that possible?
That's funny. I figured this would come up, and I'm gonna tell you because you bring up a great point. There was no internet back then, so if you wanted gear specifically, like any kind of, there was no such thing as like high quality concealed carry gear. I mean, there was probably some leather holster manufacturers that were making some stuff, but they were few and far between. And I was a colonel's driver and his, driver and slash bodyguard, PSD, I guess they'd call it today. And I did that for, I took a tour with the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, special operations capable. We went all over the Europe and Northern Africa and the Middle East. And I knew that this was coming up, and I knew that I was going to have to carry concealed for the times that we went out in plain clothes and stuff like that. I ended up getting, I'm going to tell it, people are going to laugh at me, but it's all I had, Riley, and it was an Uncle Mike's inside the waistband holster, man, because that was just like, that's all I could find, man.
Yeah. Well, I think most of us have probably been there at some point.
Yeah.
And like to your point, that was all you could find. I first started carrying concealed in the early 2000s, and even then, you didn't have the plethora of options that you have today. And I also didn't know better, frankly. And there's definitely some good options, but my first holster was an Uncle Mike's too. I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
sack of crap, but that's where I started, and I'm glad to know that that's where you started as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember, I needed something because I was going to be carrying what the Marine Corps said I was going to be carrying. That was a Beretta M9. So I had to get a holster big enough to fit that. Yet it had to be inside the waistband. And I mean, the possibilities were very, very small back then. And after going through several gun stores in and around Camp Lejeune, I'm like, okay, this is going to have to work. Here we go.
Yep. Your story reminds me a lot of Jeff Gonzalez, Navy SEAL, that similar thing, going overseas, being on some operations, some part of some missions where he had to be in plain clothes carrying concealed. And his story is so funny because he went to pick up, he got his orders, he got his papers, he knew where he was going, what he was going to be doing, and was told to report to the armory and get his concealed carry kit, he called it. That's what he was told. And he showed up and, was like, I'm here to get the concealed carry kit. Oh yeah, just a minute. And then pull out of a drawer a M9 and probably like an Uncle Mike's holster. He described it as just like a little pouch.
Yeah.
Like, here you go, here's your concealed carry kit. And he was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I guess I got to make it work,
Yeah, the first time, so we were on ship, so I was getting issued this M9, 2 magazines, and 30 rounds of ammunition, and the holster was on me to get. I mean, they had this leather thing that you wore out. You could wear it outside, but it made it really difficult to conceal. So I went with inside the waistband, but I didn't even, back in 92, I didn't know anything about appendix carry. I wouldn't get into appendix carry until probably 96, 97. But yeah, man, back then, people take it for granted, all the plethora of things that we have today now. The choices are virtually endless.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really in the heyday of concealed carry and have been for a few years now. But we continually see more companies, more products, things coming to the market. Some great, some not so great.
Yeah.
But let's start going down through your list here. All right. So as you explain in the article, that these are not necessarily in any particular order, but I'm very appreciative of the fact that item number 1 starts where it does, and that's with training. So what do you see a mistake that a lot of concealed carriers make where it relates to training?
Well, I think right out of the gate, they think whatever the mandatory minimum is for their state, I've achieved it, I'm done, right? It should be like a jumping off point perhaps, but a lot of times I'd say a big fat part of the bell curve with most of the concealed carry community, and I hate to use this big broad brush, Riley, but it seems like a lot of them, certainly not anybody listening to this today, but I'm speaking more to the family and friends of those of you listening today that need this information, is they take that mandatory minimum, and I'm speaking for people in my family as well, and they think they're done. In reality, that minimum standard is not a goal, man. It's a starting point. And the other thing that that mandatory minimum state required training doesn't do, it doesn't necessarily talk to you about tactics. It doesn't talk to you about medical. It doesn't talk to you about if and when edge weapons need to come into play. If that should be part of your firearms retention tactics or not? And if so, how do you employ that? It doesn't talk to you about intermediate weapons like other force options like pepper spray and some of these other things. So it leaves out 90% of what you probably need to know. You're not going to get it there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And along with that, an attitude that I know you've come across, I've certainly seen it, is, and I think at one point in my life, I probably believed this to some extent as well, and that is kind of to Andrew Branca, who's watching here on the live feed today. He says, all American males believe they shoot well. 99% are badly mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's my point, is like you get concealed carriers that, guys that are coming into kind of this lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. And they're like, hey, I'm going to start carrying my gun concealed, or carrying a gun, period. And the thought process is, well, I grew up shooting. I own a bunch of other guns. I spent time on the farm, just plinking away and, hunting and all this stuff. Wow, what more is there? I'm a good shot, right? I just carry this gun, and that's kind of the attitude, and that's, again, that's even kind of, I think, my attitude in the early days of my own concealed carry was, I know what I'm doing. I'm a pretty good shooter. I pull the gun out and I plink away at some cans or bottles or whatever, and I do pretty good, right? What more do I need to do? The thing is that Dunning-Kruger effect is very strong.
Yeah, you're sitting at the peak of the Dunning-Kruger effect when you think like that. And and I was like that, man. I would say probably before I joined the Marine Corps, I'm like, what are they going to possibly teach me? Rich Brown is from a long storied tradition of East Tennessee shooters, and I'm going to be just fine. And wow, my mind was blown open with what I learned about firearms in the Marine Corps. Then I ended up teaching firearms in the Marine Corps, and then I started being a competitive shooter in the early '90s, and I'm like, then my mind got blown again with what is the realm of the possible with a firearm, man. And I know you're a competitive shooter, Riley, and a lot of people listening today probably are. And I would highly encourage you, if you think you know what you're doing, go ahead, shoot a USPSA match, IDPA match. They're going to help you, and you're going to realize, wow, there's a lot more that can be done with this firearm than I thought.
For sure, for sure. What got you started in the competitive shooting?
When I went to high risk personnel protection course up at Quantico, I came back from that, and there was a guy who was running a range right outside of Camp Lejeune. Again, this is like 92, 93 time frame. And he started a range. He's like, I'm going to have some of these IPSC style matches, little combat pistol matches at my range. So I started going to those on a Saturday. My partner, Mike Seeklander, and I would attend some of those. And again, it was eye opening, not just for me, but I think for a lot of the Marines that were shooting there that thought we knew what we were doing. And then you get in that environment and you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot more to it.
Mm. Was that even the start for Seeklander and his competitive shooting as well?
Oh, yeah. When we went on ship in 1992, we were talking about really doing that heavy when we got back. And Mike went out and bought a 1911 Colt Gold Cup that was compensated. And we bought a bunch of gear. And as soon as we got back from that deployment, we started shooting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I knew that you guys had served together and went way back, but that's kind of cool too that you both also got started in competitive shooting around the same time as well. Now he is a world champion. What does that make you?
I used to kick his butt.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
But nowadays, not so much. No.
Nice. Yeah. All right. So, in your article, you talk about, training is really important. And you listed it first. And I think there's a lot of things that could go first in this article. Mindset is a big piece of it, and we're going to get to that. But training is a big component, because I do think that there's some people that probably, just by nature of how they're wired or how they were brought up, that overall their mindsets, for whatever reason, already pretty decent. There's definitely some refinement that can occur. Maybe someone already has a pretty solid mindset. Maybe they buy decent gear and they're carrying pretty well. But training is just something consistently that I see that is lacking for a lot of shooters. And it's not just talking about even the firearm itself. So you list here tactics, of course, medical, man, that's huge. And then edged weapons, but even, later on in the article too, you talk about other forms of self-defense like martial arts, BJJ specifically you mentioned. So what would your advice be for those listening to the show here today about where should they get started? Because I'll tell you, especially in today's world, again, comparing today to 1992, not only in terms of the gear, but also in terms of the training opportunities, it's a whole new world. It's a very different world from 30 years ago. So I think that it's very easy to either one, get suckered into training with somebody or some company or whatever that maybe is not where your money is best spent for a variety of reasons. Maybe the quality of that training itself is lacking or whatever. It's also easy to just get lost in the myriad of all the great options that are out there as well. So what would your advice be? And I'm not just talking about firearm training, I'm talking about training just in general, in the self-defense realm. Where should people get started? What do you think?
Well, on AmericanWarriorSociety.com, it's free. We got all these articles. One of them is self-assessment. So it's a way it has you run a physical fitness test and put your scores in, plug your scores into this database, and it'll spit you out a grade on where you're at with regard to your health and fitness. You'll run the 5x5 skills test, enter your times, it spits you out a grade there. You're going to answer some questions about medical. Basically, it's just a self-assessment. And at the end of it, it gives you a scorecard on where you're at with regard to combatives, shooting with a handgun and the rifle, fitness, edge weapons, unarmed combatives like BJJ or whatever. And at the end of it, you look at your scorecard. And if your scorecard says you got an A in shooting, a B in fitness, an F in edge weapons, and an F in medical, then you may want to take your training cycle and just put it in a maintenance mode with regard to the shooting and fitness, and then focus on where you're lacking. But I think few people really do put any kind of analytics to it. So we tried to. I mean, it's an imperfect scoring system, Riley. I'll tell you, it's filled with our own biases when we put it together. But if you don't have anything, it might be a good place to just evaluate where you're at right now.
Well, that's awesome. We'll have to dig up the link where to find that the tool. I'm actually on the site right now. I'm all like, okay, where is that? Because I actually didn't even know about that. I feel really dumb now.
It's called, I think it's called, and because we put it together because a lot of our members came in, they're like, man, there's so much content here in the training where you guys have all these learning modules. I'm almost overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. So your question, I think that question is a beautiful, valid question. Where do I start? Well, let's assess where you're at. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we can build you a plan with our learning modules to get you where you need to go.
Yeah. It can also seem very overwhelming to folks many are probably here looking to be educated about concealed carry, which typically involves a firearm. And, now you start telling them, well, you need to be concerned about medical. You need to be concerned about your health and your fitness. You need to be concerned about hand-to-hand combatives. That can just even, that can compound that what's the word I'm looking for? Just that
the paralysis, right?
Yeah, decision paralysis. Even like, now what? So, what would you say to someone? And obviously our funds, our resources are competing for all these different things as well. So, I might have a budget of, say, $1,000 that I can use in the next 6 months. That I can apply towards training. Maybe that's training and ammunition or other gear as well. Well, now where do I split that up? And so what would you recommend looking at all the different disciplines? How does someone get started in deciding where they should put forth their best or their initial efforts?
I would have to circle back to the analysis, because I think the analysis is going to determine a lot of that. You're going to do the analysis and it's going to tell you, well, your shooting is good. If your shooting is good, that probably means that you have a good defensive rig. You've got a good firearm. You've got good ammunition. You know how to shoot it, but your medical is lacking. So you're going to probably want to put together an IFAC kit or an individual first aid kit. You're going to want to do stuff like that, right? Did I lose you, Riley? I'm not sure if you can see and hear me. I've lost you if you're there. Not sure if we're still going. Looks like we're having some technical difficulty if you're still out there. If you are, I can't see you, so I'll just keep standing by until somebody tells me otherwise. Looking at my notes. Hmm. I think Riley's computer crashed. We'll see if he can get back up on here.
And I'm back.
Hey,
Well, that was awkward.
it happens.
Yeah, boy, I don't know. Something happened and the computer did not like it. I noticed my video started getting laggy and it just never recovered.
Ah,
So, I think I had asked you about and I didn't get to hear the rest of your response. And obviously, after the fact, I'll have to edit all this and fix this and put this back together for the audio file. But I'd asked you about, again, if you had any thoughts or tips or ideas about, looking at all these different disciplines. Is there anything that you would prioritize first, or anything that you'd recommend as far as getting started with limited training budget and resources?
yeah, I mean, we all have limited resources, so that's a great question. But I would go back to the assessment, Riley. And once you do the assessment, let's say you shoot a great five by five, then I probably know a few things about you. I can draw the conclusion that you probably have a decent holster, you probably have a good firearm, you probably have got good ammo, you know how to use it because you scored well. So then you probably don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. But when you do the assessment, let's say you can't do a pull up, okay? You can't do 40 crunches in 2 minutes or whatever. So we know where you're lacking. Maybe you're physically lacking. Then you're going to need to get to the gym. And we've said it before. Maybe you guys have said it too. The best gadget you can buy for your gun is a gym membership for you, right?
Yeah. Yep. I like it. Yeah. All right. So we'll have to, like I said, we'll find or I'll get a link from you or something where people can find this assessment, and everybody should go do that, and then figure out where you're weakest and start tackling those things one by one.
Yeah.
Now we got 10 tips. So we're gonna run out of time getting through all 10. So let's get to number 2 here, the gun. And
Oh, yeah.
you do a really great job of talking about uh, this REAP acronym, and using that to kind of walk us through some of the important factors of choosing a good defensive handgun for carrying. So what is REAP? Walk us through that.
Yeah. My partner Mike put this together as far as I know. It stands for reliability, ergonomics, accuracy, and power. So number one thing a gun has to do, it has to function reliably. If it's not reliable, you don't need to be carrying that gun to defend yourself with, because I think a lot of people forget the reason we carry a gun is to use it. In the unfortunate event that you're forced to use it, is this gun going to be reliable? And what does reliability mean? I don't know. It might mean 500 rounds without a stoppage. It might mean 1,000 rounds without stoppage. It might mean more than that. And when you're looking at reliability, obviously the magazine can impact that. The type of round you use could impact that. Ergonomics, I think a lot of people pick up the gun up. This one feels good. Well, does it? It might feel good, but if your thumb can't work the thumb safety because you got arthritis, or you can't reach the magazine catch, or whatever, your hands can't manipulate the control surface as well, then maybe it's not the right gun for you. Accuracy, and I will tell you, a lot of people really geek out on accuracy, but most production guns are accurate enough.
Mm.
Accurate enough might mean, a 4-inch group at 25 yards or something like that. I don't know, but it needs to be somewhat accurate. And finally, power, you got to pick a caliber that transfers enough kinetic energy to the target to have some sort of effect. But at the same time, does that mean you need to carry a 10 millimeter because it has a lot of power? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. You need to consider what that is, because of course with power and ammunition size, a 40 or a 10 or a 45, your ability to carry additional ammo is going to be greatly reduced. So there's a lot of trade-offs in there, but the REAP test is a good way to put a little bit of analytics toward selecting firearm.
Yeah. And as is the case with so many things in life, is there's always trade-offs with things. I mean, you just touched on the trade-off between, say, a powerful cartridge and the ability to shoot that effectively, controllably, quickly, that sort of thing, right? I love this
Yep.
REAP acronym. I might have to steal it. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Reliability, ergonomics, accuracy, and power. It's a great way to easily remember that.
Yeah. Cool.
That's great. All right, know the law is number 3. And this is a big one, and we spend a good deal of our time on our podcast. We don't try to get too much into the weeds of the law per se, as we're not necessarily legal experts, but looking at various what we call justified saves. These are stories where typically civilians use deadly force in a justified manner to stop bad things from happening to good people. Uh, we look at a lot of those situations. We share a lot of stories too, and I think one of the biggest lessons to be learned a lot of times is there's lots of times where people they do things, as far as stopping a threat, and they overall do a pretty good job. They probably generally have some understanding of the law, but there seems to be in almost every story we come across that there's little things here and there that, well, that might not be the best approach. And some of that, it comes from really understanding the nuances of the law, and that is easier said than done. But thank goodness we got guys like Andrew Branca.
Yeah. Yeah, big fan. And every year we do Warrior Camp, bring Andrew out. He gives his full 1 day lecture on the laws of self-defense, innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. But besides just self-defense law, which is ultimately the most important type of law you need to know, I think it's also gun law, ammo law, your carry law in your state and any state you plan on traveling to, self-defense law in your state and any state that you're planning on traveling to. Because one of the things with the beautiful thing called reciprocity is the gun laws in your state are going to be different from the gun laws in the state you're traveling to. The self-defense laws in your state that you're maybe hopefully familiar with may be a little bit more nuanced, to borrow your word, Riley, in the state that you're going to. And where you can and can't carry, I promise you, will be different where you live and where you're heading to. So you have to know the law, man, or anybody can run afoul of it. It's easy.
Mm-hmm. And you're exactly right in that regard. I mean, gun law, carry law, self-defense law, three types of laws that, and you cover these in this article also. Now, gun law and carry law, those are two things that we are at concealedcarry.com a little bit better at. But then we bring Andrew on where we need him for the self-defense side of things. But it's really important to know all three of those pieces of law. And to that point, I try not to get too off into the weeds with self-defense law because that's not my lane. I mean, I think I get it pretty well. But Andrew is also very good about when someone asks him about carry law or gun law, he's like, not my thing, bro. Like,
Yeah.
I just do the self-defense thing. And I think that goes to show, like, a lot of people in their minds, I think they kind of lump all those things together, but they really are distinct. And there's nuances across all those different areas of the law.
Yeah, and again, going back to you were a police officer and I was a police officer. There was all that we had to know there. And then it seems like almost every theater I've ever been a Marine in, the ROE, the rules of engagement in that theater were a little bit different than the one that I was in previously. So it's something that I've obviously thought a lot about, but it doesn't mean I'm an expert in any regard. And I defer to the experts on all this stuff, man.
Yeah, that's good. Consistency of carry, number 4. I like this one a lot. What does this mean?
Yeah, it means when you carry it, where you carry it, how you carry it. Sometimes like, well, when I'm carrying my EDC X9, I carry around in the chamber, but see, when I carry a Glock, I don't. And sometimes I run an appendix rig, and sometimes I like the small of the back, and sometimes I take it out of my appendix carry because it's not comfortable for this long ride, and I'll put it in my truck holster, I'll put it in the center console. Consistency of carry really is like when, where, and how you carry it, and just whatever it is, figure it out. Well, why do you take it out of your pants when you get in your truck? Well, this rig is not comfortable. Then get a new rig. This belt is not, when I wear this kind of dress belt or these slacks, I have to use a different kind of holster. I think you got to figure that out, because the only way, the best gun having a gunfight is the gun you have on you, right? It's not the one you have in your truck or the one you wish you had or the one you left at home. So consistently carry that firearm if you're going to choose to carry a firearm.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and you end this part in your article by saying if you're going to carry your gun, carry your gun. Uh, I think I strive to carry every day, 365 days in a year. Well, this year is 366 actually, leap year. 366 days this year. I strive to carry every one of those days. Are there going to be a few exceptions here and there? Sure. There's going to be those long travel days. You're on planes all day, or you're in some other non-permissive environment where it's just not possible. Sure, but I mean, if you can carry a gun, carry your gun. What do you find kind of prevents or holds people back from being able to actually? Is there anything any recommendations you have as far as kind of getting to that point where you're carrying consistently, and not only in terms of location but also on a day to day basis?
I think one of the big ones, and this is completely off the top, I haven't really thought about why people don't carry, but as you're asking the question, Ronnie, the only thing that leaps to mind is, a lot of my friends work on secure facilities. They work in a skiff or they work with
Yeah.
their sensitive materials. They can't carry that gun onto the facility. Even in cases where their job is to guard that facility, they can't carry their own personal firearm onto the facility and leave it in their vehicle, even though they're going to get a firearm issued to them as soon as they get through the layers of security. And there was no different for me. I'm a retired Marine. The last several years when I was stationed on a Parris Island, I couldn't carry a gun on base. So that meant that I couldn't drive with a gun in my car to get on base, let alone carry on base. So I think that where people work and stuff like that can really hamper their ability to carry maybe as much as they wish they could.
Yeah. That really is a tough one right there. If you're a federal employee working in a facility of some kind, I mean, that was the roughest 3 year patch of my own. Is when I did a stint in the federal government for 3 years in a secure facility, and that sucked because Monday through Friday I could not take my gun with me.
And it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah. Now I wasn't defenseless, mind you. I knew what I could have and what I couldn't have, and I had tools. I'm sure as you did as well.
Well, yeah, and then that's exactly right. I don't let the fact that this place, I love to go to Europe and I can't carry a gun there.
Yeah,
Your mindset is that it doesn't really matter because I have other tools. I'm the weapon system. I keep my body fit. I have other tools that I can legally carry, and I know how to utilize them. I carry gravity with me everywhere I go, and I do jujitsu. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just kind of a mindset and a way of training that overcomes that, because I'm going to live my life and have a great time, which I encourage everyone in our community to do. Don't get pigeonholed into this stuff and let it deter you from actually living life.
yep. Well, and that segues really nicely into item number 5 on your 10 item list here, which is mindset. And you say this one is easily the most important topic of the list. I'm not going to quote this whole thing here, but a couple of things that stood out to me. Actually, this quote that you have here from Japan's greatest samurai, Miyamoto Musashi, which that makes me really happy to hear you quote because I'm a big fan of samurais in Japan and all that. He wrote in the Book of Five Rings, "In my school, you can win with a long weapon, and yet you can also win with a short weapon. For this reason, I don't specify the length of the sword, but regard the essence of my approach as the resolve to gain victory by any means, whatever the weapon and whatever its size." What does that mean to you?
It means pretty much a plain text reading exactly what it is. It doesn't matter. If you don't have the will to use the firearm or the weapon or whatever it is, the fact that you carry one doesn't mean anything. Moreover, if you're completely unarmed, you can figure something out and be the most dangerous man in the room with a ballpoint pen. So I think that will to win, that mindset really has to go with you everywhere you go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And of course, you talk a little bit about situational awareness and hardening. And actually, I wanted to get your take on what you mean by hardening. You referred to the run, hide, fight mantra,
Yeah.
but you kind of have a little bit of a different take than what we sometimes hear with run, hide, fight.
Yeah, I got into this looking at some of the active killer stuff that was going on, and run, hide, fight. I'm a big fan of that. I think it's really good. Sometimes it's misunderstood. Oh, first I have to run, and then I hide, and then I might have to fight. Well, it may be fight. Fight might be the first one. Hide might be the first one. Run might be the first one. It doesn't matter. It depends on a lot of variables as to which order that comes in. But if you hide in a room and you don't have the ability to harden that room, then you may die in that room. So I think knowing how to harden a room that you find yourself in, or let's say you're a daycare worker at a church and an active killer comes in your church, if you had a simple device that you could put in that door jamb and stop a threat from coming in that door and harming the children that you're there to protect, I think that would be a lot, because just shutting and locking the door may not be enough. So there are a lot of really cool gadgets on the market today that are designed to help you harden those breach points, those doors and stuff. And having a few of those in your church room or in your go bag or get home bag or in your office desk, I think can mean the difference, especially if your plan is to hide in one of those events.
Yeah. You know, the science proves, I mean, if you just look at statistical analysis of mass killings, people that make it difficult to kill them, they're, I mean, substantially greater probability of surviving that event. And referring to things like the Virginia Tech shooting, where you had some of these classrooms that killer was able to just go in, willy nilly, nobody, keeping him from going in, and just walked in and started shooting up these classrooms, right? But then you had some classrooms, and particularly once some of these students realized what was going on the floor below them, or even as he got up to that second floor and started working his way towards them, they started barricading the rooms, blocking the windows, doing everything they could to make it difficult for him to get to them. And those are the rooms, the ones specifically that made some effort of making them a difficult target. That's where the survivors were. So I like
Yeah.
to think of it, this run, hide, fight methodology as, what do I need to do in this moment to make myself as difficult to kill as possible?
Mm-hmm. Well, and different, it might be closing with the threat. That might
Yep.
be the safest thing. As we saw in the church shooting down there, where was it Mr. Wilson that ended the threat there? I think it was.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of those ushers when the shotgun came out, maybe the best thing for him to do. I'm not anymore on quarterback. It may have been close the distance and get on top of
Yep.
that firearm. So yeah, and you got a lot of bad choices when those things happen, and you have to pick from the least bad, right?
Yeah. But to your point here with this number 5 mindset, I mean, that's what mindset is. That's what's so important about it, is mentally you're prepared, you're in the place you need to be, so that if you were faced at that moment, like some of those people were in that West Freeway church in Texas, what would you do? I hope you, myself, those watching our show here today, listening to it, whatever, that we would see that opportunity, recognize it for what it is, and close and step in there. I mean, because there was quite a bit of time there, wasn't there?
There was, and on the mindset, one of the courses I went to in the Marine Corps, I can't remember which one it was, but one of the trainers said something like, gunfight, you're going to get shot. Let's just get that out of the way. If it's a two-way exchange, you're probably going to get shot. Most handgun rounds are not that effective at killing folks. So, all your job is to do is stay alive till you get to the hospital, and then when you get there, just relax, let them do their job. And so I've always kind of thought about that. Hey, I'm going to get shot. That's probably going to happen, and that's cool. I can keep the fight going, and then when I get to the hospital, I just relax and let them do their job. But whatever your mantra needs to be to help you with your mindset, do it.
Yeah. Number 6, the right gear. And you're not just talking about a gun or the ammo here. We're talking about other gear. You have a pretty good list here. What are some things that in your early days of concealed carry, Rich, looking back that you go, man, I wish I knew how important this one thing was.
Yeah, probably the belt going back then. I might have had some sort of rigger's belt on, uh, but it was not that robust. So I always believe in starting with the belt as the foundation. Then the holster's got to be high quality. Then a good set of robust sights. I really like a wide notch rear and a thin fiber optic front. I think that helps me acquire my sights pretty quick. I mean, but somebody else's experience may vary. It also means, having a cell phone, right? And having it in the right pocket. If you're going to draw your handgun and fight with your right-handed guy, then the cell phone probably needs to be in the left side pocket. And we see this often when guys come to the range. Okay, we're going to get on your cell phone, and they're fumbling to get the right hand to dig the phone out. I mean, it's simple as that. These little micro prepping things. But anyway, pocket flashlight, man, huge fan. Don't go anywhere without my ProTac 1L.
Nice.
Plug there. A knife. If you're going to carry a knife and you have decided that you've trained with it, you know how you're going to integrate it into your system, then you should be carrying a knife. Tourniquets or some sort of additional stuff. I mean, again, going back to these YouTube videos, you'll watch people dump 1,000 things out of their pockets. I don't normally roll like that. I keep it pretty minimal as much as possible. But anyway, Riley, that's some things that you need to think about.
Nice, man. Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that as well, especially that belt piece. For too long, I put up with a crappy belt.
Yeah. I don't think people realize, if they're new to concealed carry and dressing to the gun, they'll figure it out eventually. But I can't say it enough. Pick a good belt. And yeah, well, I was going to say our sponsor's got some great belts, but I won't go into that.
Well, that's all right. I'll go into it for you. Precision Tactical, right?
Precision holsters, man. Yeah, they make
Yeah.
the Ultra Appendix holster I use, and they make the belt that Mike and I wear. And check them out. They make some great stuff.
I was checking out some of Mike's gear at the Bigger Circle class I was in November with him. Looks like really solid gear. So,
Oh yeah.
Super impressed with precision holsters and Precision Tactical. All right, health and fitness. You make a really solid point here. This is number 7. You are far more likely to die of a heart attack or stroke than a violent assault. So, what does that lead us? Hopefully, that leads us to do something.
Well, yeah, man. I turned 50 last year, so health and fitness is big on my list. But again, like I say in the article, am I saying that you need to be ready to go to BUDS or Special Forces Assessment Selection? I'm not saying that. Well, what I am saying is you may need to have the ability to pull your rear end up over a something or do whatever, But I think people don't think about this enough because, again, the killer of most people that carry a gun is never going to be a violent felon. It's probably going to be their health, man. And it's something that you need to remedy. And again, this could be easily number one because the fitter you are, the less likely you are to succumb to those things. The fitter you are, the more likely you are to be able to handle the stresses of those kind of intense emotional moments and stressful moments. So something to think about.
Yeah, and how often do you see comments like, well, I can't do XYZ thing as it relates to carrying a gun or carrying a proper gun or carrying in maybe a more ideal position because I'm too round, I'm too big, I've got these other health challenges. I mean, we always have to accommodate things for ourselves, but I think that's only to a certain point. I mean, like if you have a legitimate restriction, you got a injured knee, and that it's been repaired and is to the best you can. Like you got to accommodate that, right? But talking about those health choices that we actually have as far as choices, right? We see those comments a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've had 3 knee surgeries and I've got a screw holding my shoulder together. But if I can get out there and train as hard as I do at my age, with these injuries and stuff like that than I think anybody can. If you do it smart and you work within what you have and you're aware of the limitations that you have, there's no reason why anybody listening to us today can't do that. And again, it's creating and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Nothing crazy. Like, I'm not saying you have to be able to bench press a tank. I'm just saying you need to do something. Get your body moving, doing some resistance training or something like that.
Yeah. Number 8, BJJ, Brazilian
Ah.
Jiu-Jitsu. Why?
Well, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is not perfect, and I was really reticent to put that on there. But I think that if you know Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or have a good understanding of some of it, and then you can employ your edge weapons from the closed guard or what have you, or you bring a firearm into the mix in a grappling position or a clinch position, and you can do that, then you're going to be light years ahead of everybody else because the entangled gunfight is not a myth. It's actually a reality. I mean, some people say, well, it really doesn't exist. You know, I've looked at this a lot. It does exist. I mean, and you need to be training for it.
Yeah. Whether it's a gunfight that turns into an entanglement or it starts as a hands-on fight and progresses to a gunfight. There's so much video evidence I could point to. Like, look, this. And actually, a lot of our justified save stories, I have some statistics from those, and it's about 30, I think it's 28% of the stories we've shared on the podcast involve some kind of physical altercation along with the gunfight.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was in a Middle Eastern country as a much younger man, and I ended up getting in a kind of a gun grappling situation with my rifle, and ended up having to really muzzle strike a couple of folks to get them off me. You know, it wasn't necessarily a shoot situation. It could have quickly turned into a shoot situation, but because they were grabbing the rifle, and and it was a pretty dicey little moment there. But I mean, the entanglement is real because what is 1 minute somebody's standing near you, the next minute they're trying to take your weapon. Because this is another important truism, Riley, and I don't know how many times you guys have talked about it, but I'm sure you have. Everywhere you go as a concealed carrier, you're taking a gun there. If you go to the movies, you're eating popcorn with your honey, and you're carrying your concealed firearm. You brought a movie to the late night showing of, whatever, and it was something that it really didn't dawn on me till I was in the police academy. Somebody said, one of the instructors said, "What percentage of the time there, cadets, will you be in a situation involving a firearm? Is it 5%, 10%? Somebody said as high as 20%, and the instructor goes, 100% of the time because you brought the firearm there." So in close proximity to others, you could potentially be in an entanglement. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a good way to know how to handle those intimate contact grappling stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff, man. Number 9, clothing and attire. What would you say about this for our listeners today?
Well, I use a marathon analogy, Riley, in that article, and I did that purposefully because one of the things you learn from preparing for a 26.2 mile run, or I've done a Spartan Beast, and stuff like that, is how is this equipment going to work with me as I run and as I train, and is it going to work right? And you will pick and choose clothing that doesn't work, just like you and I with our belts, right? We had to figure out that we needed a more robust belt. Dressing to the gun, what does it look like? I really like this shirt, but it's a little too tight to properly conceal this firearm. Or I really like this pants, but it's a little too snug to carry inside the waistband. So there's a lot of things there to consider when you're dressing for the gun.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's so true. Now, it seems to me, and frankly, I'm a little bit surprised that a lot of times I see you in plaid flannel shirts and whatnot. Is that a special concealed carry secret, or is that just a Rich Brown style thing?
Well, I'm an East Tennessean man, and I try to be the gray man here in town. I'll tell you a real quick funny story. When I first moved here, my retirement party in the Marine Corps, some of my guys knew I was going back. I was retiring to this farm, so they gave me some brand new overalls. I wore them into town one day, and I've got my brand new overalls on. I'm all proud of. And this guy comes up to me, this old timer, and he says, "What you running for?" I looked at him. I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm not running." He's like, "No, what are you running for?" I said, "I'm not running, sir. I'm seated." And he's like, "No, no, no. Every time one of you fancy fellers comes in here with your brand new overalls on, you're always wanting us to vote for you. So what are you running for?" So again, it's like you got to know your situation that you're in, and did I wear flannels when I went to Rome? Of course not, right? But around here, it is the appropriate going about your day attire.
I came here today, wearing the closest thing I could find to what Rich might wear, and you went with the hoodie, bro.
I know, man. I'm changing it up. It's pretty cold down here today, actually.
Yeah, yeah, it's been kind of cold out here in Colorado as well. Number 10, we saved the number 10 for last, of course, because, believe it or not, Marines do know how to count from 1 to 10. Ammunition selection.
Yeah, ammunition selection. A lot of people probably overthink this, and I have a brother-in-law, God bless him, that I think overthinks this one. But I would recommend maybe a jacketed hollow point that's bonded ammunition, rapidly and reliably expands when it hits tissue that doesn't overpenetrate. And I could say, well, like I say in the article, maybe the federal HST is that round for you, but I don't know, because if it doesn't reliably cycle and function in your firearm, then it's definitely not the right round for you. So whatever you choose to use of that expensive self-defense ammo, you're going to have to train with it. You can't just buy a box, load a magazine, throw it in your gun, and roll out, because you don't know how that stuff is going to cycle in your firearm until you shoot quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yep. And I don't remember if it was in this. Yeah, actually, this is where you say it. You said the stopping power is shot placement, not some weird voodoo the round does. If you can't control a shot placement reliably, then you need to train grip, sights, trigger until you can. And I was just thinking about, I was actually going to send a message to him, Andy Brown, author of Warnings Unheeded. I got a copy up there.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and his active shooter that he had to stop at Fairchild Air Force Base, he was carrying an M9,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna send him the question, be like, dude, what were you using? Because I'll bet you it was standard military issue FMJ,
I guarantee you it probably was. That's
right?
exactly what I was carrying when I was carrying
Yep.
in the Marine Corps. Nothing fancy there.
Which isn't the most arguably effective thing to carry, right? And
No.
overpenetration can be an issue. But to your point, stopping power is shot placement. How can you elaborate on that just a little bit more for us?
Yeah, man. I mean, you take a look at these gunfights, and a lot of times, uh, and I think there's some truth to the fact that whether someone goes down after being shot has a lot more to do with psychology than necessarily physiology. But at the same time, if you shoot somebody in their hand, don't think they're going to go down. If you shoot somebody in the brainstem, I promise you they're going to go down. So just like Wilson shooting in the church shows us, that shot placement was critical to stop the threat. And ultimately, that's what we want to do. We want to stop the threat. So make shot placement what you focus on, right?
Yeah, yeah, so true. But then again, try not to overthink things. Just use HST, Gold Dot,
Yep.
Critical Duty.
Yep.
Any number of these rounds that are well known and have a great deal of real world data, as far as look at how many police departments and agencies are issuing those rounds and the effectiveness that they have when it comes to stopping a bad guy on a lot of these cops' worst day.
Yeah. One of my good friends, TC Fuller, wrote an article for our site as well, because he was at the FBI firearms training unit there in Quantico when they did the change from, I think, 40 to 9 mil.
Yeah.
And so he wrote an article for us about all the things that they went into, all the science that went into why they chose that ammunition. But still, that ammunition is only as effective as where you place it, right?
Yep. Yeah, you got it. So again, it kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? As far as where
Yeah.
we started, Rich, with number one being training.
Yeah, totally, man. And the last thing, the last reason I wrote this article was because there were some things that I thought were unnecessary out there that people on YouTube were saying, "Oh man, this is so important. This is the number two most important thing." So I added a few things. I don't know if you want to go into them or not that I thought weren't as
Yeah.
necessary as maybe some people thought they were.
Well, if you still have time, I have time.
Absolutely, brother.
Okay, because we're at that hour mark that I told you we wouldn't exceed. Of course, there was probably a 10-minute delay due to my computer crashing. All
It
right.
happens.
So, so these are some things that I think you're right. A lot of people would look at and go, this is a concealed carry tip. But you're saying that these aren't maybe as big a factor as what people might think. So what are those?
Uh, some of the things I saw was, touching or adjusting your firearm in public. You just never, ever, ever, ever do this. Never under any circumstances. Well, if the gun's fixing to fall out, you may want to reach and touch your shirt and gently move that gun where it's back situated in its holster. And if you have to adjust your gun, people in public do not normally carry firearms. So when they see you adjusting your garment on your, I'm touching my shirt at my belt line and gently moving something around, they don't naturally assume, oh, he's moving his shield or he's moving his Smith and Wesson M&P around or his Glock 19X. That's the way you think, man. So I don't think that's that big a deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's something to. I mean, there was a time that I would have agreed with, don't ever touch or adjust your gun, and we're not talking about taking. You definitely don't want to take things out of your holster,
Ooh.
out and about in public, whatever. You want to do that only where it's safe and appropriate for you to make those kind of that level of an adjustment. I'll tell you that's happened once or twice. You carry every day, in your life. There's going to be times where you're like, crap, I got to make an adjustment. Well, I try to find a place that's appropriate to do so. And, like a family bathroom for me is like my little secret, where it's like the bathroom, where you're going to be completely alone and you can go in there and lock the door and being absolutely mindful of safety, make that adjustment that you needed to make at that point, get, back into the holster, whatever it is, and away you go. But I would
And
agree with
then,
you at one point, and I've gotten to now where I've learned that there's some things I think I can even do as far as tweaking this or adjusting that and making it look like it's just normal movement, normal clothes adjusting, because people do that all the time.
they do that all the time. And a lot of people will carry their cell phones on some sort of carrying device on their belt line. So I think, and they're moving them all day long. And I think that's a lot of what people think you're doing. But again, like you said, Raleigh, and I want to be clear, that doesn't mean taking out your gun.
Right.
And if your gun is constantly shifting and moving around, you probably need to make some adjustments to the holster or the belt or your trousers or something that's causing you to adjust and touch your gun all the time, because that's not good. The gun should, once it goes in the holster, should never come out of that holster while you're in. I don't believe in open carry. Have I done it? Yeah, absolutely, man. Me and Mike go on hiking and hunting trips out in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, almost every single year, man. And I'm in the back country. I'm not concealing that firearm, but I'm not going to Starbucks with it either,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, good thoughts there, brother. Actually, I was just going to add to that we've touched on already quality gear like belt, holster, your clothes can come into this as well. And if you're the higher quality gear that you're using, typically the less problems you have with things moving, shifting, and needing adjustment. Would you agree?
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're having to adjust things a lot of times, I think it's a good idea to look at what you're doing and evaluate that and ask how you can do it better. All right. So what else do we have? Unnecessary CCW stuff.
Printing, man.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things again, if I can see the crisp outline of your firearm, that's not what I'm talking about. If that's not, that's not printing, that's advertising what you're carrying. But if there's a little bit of the magazine leaves a bump every now and then when you turn a certain way, I don't see that as that big of a problem. Others may. I personally don't. Now, if you're carrying a Glock 17 with a with a mag well on it and it's sticking way out here because you're carrying 3 o'clock position. That's not what I'm talking about. That you're carrying maybe too big of a gun and you're printing too much. But a little bit of printing doesn't necessarily bother me because, again, most people don't carry a gun and they wouldn't normally assume that you are. And another thing, when it comes to carrying a gun in a holster, there's a friend of mine. He's a retired Secret Service agent, and then he went to the Air Marshals and was their Inspector General for the Air Marshals. And he says, Rich, when I was on Bush's Secret Service detail and stuff like that, he goes, you know how I could tell who the good guys with guns were? And I said, no. How do you tell that? And I'm like, here it comes. If they have their gun in a holster, they're a good guy. And he was dead serious. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. If the guy's carrying a gun in a holster, it's a high quality gun. It's in a holster. It's concealed, and I can see a little bump. And he's wearing 5'11" pants or something ridiculous. This guy's a good guy, man. I'm not sweating this guy.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that as well. Tell us about night sights.
Yeah, when I first got into this, probably in the early to mid 90s, I thought night sights were the cat's meow. And I've kind of backed off on that because they don't really do anything to help you identify the target. They show you where your sights are, and that's really cool. But unless I can identify my target with that, I don't really know if I've got a shoot or not. So I don't see that as that big of a deal. If I light someone up with my light, it normally will backlight my own sights against the threat. So that's more important to me. Night sights can be good if you have your firearm in a holster or something like that at your bedside table. It's going to illuminate where the gun is and the orientation of the gun. So maybe night sights are good for that. But I don't think that they're a have to have on your defensive handgun. That's my opinion.
I agree. I concur. This has been something we've hit on the podcast numerous times. That, yeah, if you are relying on your night sights, chances are you are not using enough light to identify what you are shooting.
Yep, spot on, man.
Yeah. Good thoughts. And the final one here, carry positions.
Yeah, I think I myself, I'm a huge advocate of appendix carry. It's the way I've been carrying a firearm since probably, like I said, 96 or 97 is when I made the switch over. And but it's not for everybody, and which is why I'm fine with it. If you're carrying it some other way, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever, that's cool, man. Just again, it goes back to consistency of carry. If you carry that way, that know the limitations of what you're doing, know where it's going to be a hindrance to you, know where if you're bending over, you carry at the 3 o'clock position, you're bending over to put things in your truck, it's going to expose your gun and your hands are away from the firearm. So understand the limitations of your carry position, work to eliminate those disadvantages and go forward. But I'm not going to run around being an acolyte for the appendix carry and say that's what everybody should do because I think it's the greatest thing in the world,
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, that's a good way to wrap this up here today as well. All right, so guys, I'll make sure to include a link to this article in the show notes, as well as I'll go back and edit the Facebook and YouTube posts as well to include it so you can find it easily. And I'd recommend you go read this article, 10 Tips on Carrying Concealed to Win the Fight. There's a lot that goes into winning a fight. This is, as you said, this is not even a complete, fully comprehensive list.
No. And the other thing is, I think you hit on something that may reminded me, like, why are you carrying a gun to begin with? What's the whole purpose of carrying a gun? Is it to exercise your constitutional rights? And if so, knock yourself out. But for me, I'm carrying a gun for the horrible event that may occur when and if I ever have to use it, right? So with that being said, there's a whole lot more that goes into it than just carrying the gun. What is the context in which I'm carrying it? What is the context in which I may have to use it someday? And then I let that dictate a lot of the other things around it.
Yeah. Solid advice, man. Guy, Rich, anything else that we've missed or that you're just sitting there thinking, man, I wish I could have said this thing or that thing, or as a kind of final parting words, where should people go to find out more, to find you, to anything else you want to kind of throw out there as far as websites, social media, whatever it is.
Yeah, just a thank you to you and Mr. Paulson for all that you guys do for the Concealed Carry Nation, man. You guys have been doing a phenomenal job for years. I've certainly watched what you're doing. Mike has too, and consumed some of your content. And just thanks again to you guys. I don't have anything other than you can find me at AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Like us and follow us on the social media platforms. We're there. If you need to reach out to me, Rich at AmericanWarriorSociety.com, and I'll take care of you as much as I can.
Nice. It's awesome. Well, guys, there you have it. You heard it from the man, Rich Brown. Again, give them some love. I will find this evaluation tool that you guys have, and we're going to make sure we push that out because I think that's really awesome. And yeah. All right. So today's episode, again, brought to you by Guardian Nation, guardiannation.com, and mountainmanmedical.com, and honorarily, AmericanWarriorSociety.com. So you guys know where it's at. And yeah, I don't think I have anything more other than to say, because this is the thing on our show, Rich, that you got to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.
Take care, guys.
And that's a wrap of the recorded audio. And to all of you out there in Facebook and YouTube land, thanks for being a part of it. And thank you, Rich, most of all.
Thank you, Riley. It's been a pleasure, brother.
Yeah. All righty. We'll let you all go. Here's the end broadcast button. Goodbye.
Bye.